Welcome back, peeps, to another recorded episode of Perfectly Healthy and Toned Radio. I'm your host, Darren Fatman McDuffie, and I wanted to thank you for listening to the show. I know I got a lot of people out there who are listening to the show. You might be downloading it through iTunes, and if you are, please leave me a review. And also don't forget to connect with me on social media. I know that my Facebook fan page has not been properly used in a number of months, and I'm getting ready to start kind of rebuilding the fan page and doing some renovation, so to speak. So please bear with me. The website will also be changing. So if you've been going to fat-man.com or imthefatman.com, then you know that I haven't written anything in a while, and that's for a reason. I'm getting ready to migrate things over to a new site, or actually transforming the site rather. So again, please bear with me. Today's show is actually a continuation of a show that I did maybe a couple of weeks ago with Tim Steele, where we were talking about potatoes. But there's one gentleman who has took the potato journey, and he is really doing well with that. His name is Andrew Taylor. He goes by the name of Spudfit. And I believe Andrew's lost about 85 pounds or so just eating solely potatoes. So I wanted to have him on the show and wanted him to share his story with you. So let me read Andrew's bio real quickly. Andrew Taylor struggled with his weight for most of his life. He tried all sorts of diets and ways of eating, but the weight always came back. He had an epiphany at the end of 2015 that his attempts at weight loss were treating a symptom and not the problem. His next thought was to get as close to quitting food as possible while still eating a nutritious, healthy diet. He thought if he couldn't quit entirely, perhaps he could quit all foods except one. He spent time researching books, watching documentaries, and reading scientific literature. Through his journey, he finally settled on potatoes as the perfect food to provide nutrition and help conquer his addiction. Please help me welcome Andrew Taylor, aka Spudfit, to Perfectly Healthy and Toned Radio. Please enjoy the show. Andrew Taylor, welcome to Perfectly Healthy and Toned Radio. How are you tonight?
I'm good, and thanks for having me. I love podcasts, and I love listening to them while I train, but it's even more exciting to actually be a guest on one. So thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. I said, how are you tonight? It's actually night where you are, and it's morning for me. Obviously my earliest interview that I've ever had, waking up I think I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning to kind of prep and get ready.
That's dedication to the craft, man.
Yeah, but I wanted to get you on. I had Tim Steele on a while ago, and Tim told me about you and what you're doing with the potato diet. And I wanted to just kind of get started and ask you about your journey, man. Where were you before you actually started with the potato diet?
Yeah, well, I was pretty overweight. When I first started, I was 151.7 kilos, which I think is about 335 pounds, somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. And but yeah, like most overweight people, I've been overweight most of my life. Even as an elite junior athlete, I was still heavier than most people I was competing against. And I guess like most people, I've just been up and down and tried lots of different diets, lots of different ways of eating, and lots of different ways of exercising, and all the different things. You know, people that are overweight try lots of things, and it had been going up and down for years and years, and I just had enough. You know.
Yeah, you mentioned being an athlete. What sport were you involved in?
I was a long distance marathon kayak racer.
Oh, okay.
And I was an elite junior, but even as a junior, I wouldn't say I was hugely overweight, but I was still 5 to 10 kilos too heavy, and for me, that was probably the difference between being one of the better kayakers in Australia for my age group and maybe being one of the better kayakers in the world.
Mm-hmm. So you think that your weight actually helped you at some point with the kayaking, or was it a kind of a detriment to being where you actually wanted to be an elite kayaker?
Yeah, no, it was definitely a detriment because kayaking is very much a power to weight ratio kind of sport, as well as, you need good aerobic endurance. But if you're heavier, then it's harder. Like a marathon runner, you want to be light, or like a Tour de France cyclist, you want to be light and strong. But in kayaking is no different. You want to be light and strong. And so I was pretty good on a national level, but I think if I was ever able to get rid of that extra 5 to 10 kilos that I was carrying, then I possibly could have been pretty good on an international level too. But we'll never know. That's living in the past talking about that stuff.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of boxing. I'm a real big boxing fan. I actually played basketball, but I'm a real big boxing fan, and it's always kind of better to be light and strong and maybe be able to make that weight. I actually also wrestling as well, to be able to make the weight and then be strong on top of that. But going back to your childhood, did you always struggle with your weight when you were a child?
Yeah, always, as long as I can remember. And that was actually the reason I got into kayaking to start with, was because, all through school, primary school and secondary school, I was bullied for being overweight. And I played Australian rules football during the summer. And then I didn't want to just not do any sport during the winter, because then I would get even more overweight. So I started kayaking just to have a sport to do during summer to try not to get too fat during those months. But then it ended up taking over. But I have I've always, as long as I can remember, always had trouble with my weight, and it's not been a fun time, as most people who have had a similar journey would agree, I'd say.
Yeah, there's some people who have weight on them and they carry it really well. Were you one of those people, or did you have any health problems behind your weight?
No, I hadn't. I was yet to have any major health problems, and I did. Like, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'5" and a pretty solid build. So, as 151 kilos, 335 pounds, around about, people wouldn't necessarily look at me and say, "There's a huge fat guy." That was like, I was definitely overweight, and most people would have agreed that I was overweight. But just the size of my frame, I guess, meant I carried it well, and so I didn't look as fat as that. But I'm still a bit overweight, so but I look a lot thinner now. But as far as health problems go, I haven't had any major health problems. But I think the way I was going, it was only a matter of time,
Yeah, you and I are exact opposites. I'm 6'7", you're 6'5", but I remember there was a point in time when I was picking up a lot of weight. I actually went to about almost 250, which was a ton of weight for me, because as a kid growing up, I could not gain weight. And then suddenly as an adult, when I got up in, I think, past 25 years of age, that's when I started picking up a rapid amount of weight. But what I also noticed is that I was kind of addicted to eating. Wow, what was my favorite thing? I was addicted to peanut M&Ms. I was addicted to, I'm not sure if you're familiar with honey buns. We have them here in America. But
no, I don't have them, but the peanut M&Ms, I can relate to that.
Yeah. So I was doing some research and getting prepared for the interview, and you mentioned food addiction. And I know that for me, that was part of my thing, that, when I was bored, I would eat. I would sit in front of the TV and I would eat, and that kind of contributed to the weight gain that I had. When did you really start kind of honing in and knowing that you had a food addiction?
Well, this was only really towards the end of last year. I think like around the middle of November was probably when I first had that realization. I remember the time I was sitting at home on the couch, and I was thinking about how, because this was, last year I lost some weight and then put it back on. And I was sitting on the couch and thinking about, why do I just keep losing weight and putting it back on? Why is that? Why? I just can't. I don't know why. I try a new diet and I feel like everything's under control, and then I try to go back to a normal way of eating and it just doesn't work. And why would that be? And it popped into my head that it's a little bit like an alcoholic when they quit alcohol and they go for a few weeks or a few months without having a drink, and then suddenly they'll think, oh yeah, I think I've got this under control. Maybe I'll just have one beer. And then sure enough, they become a fully fledged alcoholic again pretty quickly. And I've thought about how that was similar to my experience with weight gain and loss. And so like when I finish a diet, then I would go, okay, I'm feeling pretty good about things. Maybe I'll just have this one slice of pizza. And soon enough, one slice of pizza becomes 3 slices of pizza becomes the whole pizza. And I thought about the similarities there. So that's what made me realize that it was really an addiction problem that I had. So yeah, then that got me thinking that if I was an alcoholic and I was going to treat myself as an alcoholic, then the ideal situation would be to quit alcohol and never have it again. And obviously you can't do that with food though. So then I thought, well, maybe I can go find a food that I can eat and it will on its own keep me healthy. And then if I could find that food, then I could quit everything else, and that would be as close as I could get to treating a food addiction in the same way as you'd treat an alcohol addiction.
Yeah, is something that you kind of rewired in your brain? You mentioned just trying to find a food, but is there something that you worked on towards? You said last year is when you kind of really thought that you had a food addiction, but is there anything that you worked on mentally when it came to being able to maybe control your obsession for food?
In the beginning, not really. I just thought I just wanted to concentrate on just not eating anything but potatoes, and I didn't really, for the first couple of months, I didn't really do much from a psychological point of view. It was just about, I just wanted to my number one aim was just let's quit food. Like obviously not entirely, but quit food except for potatoes, and just focus on that. And I just wanted to do it as an experiment to see what would happen and see if it would help, and just focus on that. Just keep that one very narrow focus of just let's quit food, eat only potatoes, and just see where it takes us. And but in the last couple of months, I've been doing a little bit more on the psychological side. With I've got a couple of poems that I love to read. And so I read, there's one particular poem, it's called If by Rudyard Kipling. And it's just a beautiful, fantastic poem. And it's a poem that's rooted in Stoic philosophy. And that really helps when I try to read it every day, but I don't always get around to it. I don't always remember. And the other thing I've done is I've tried to get back into meditation a bit more.
Yeah. You mentioned alcoholics and they having the one drink and how you had the other slice of pizza. I've been with some people who've had a drinking problem, and one of the things that I always see them struggle with is social situations, like being around others that drink. How do you handle that? Because normally, I know here in America, I'm not sure about Australia where you are, but most of our social events revolve around food. So when you're going to a party or you're going out or you're invited out to eat, how do you handle that?
Yeah, it's similar here. Any social occasion, there's always food and drink and all of that sort of stuff. And to be honest, it hasn't been an issue. For the first month, we didn't really do much, and it wasn't because I tried not to. It just didn't happen that way. And on reflection, it was probably good that it worked out that way, that there wasn't really much in the way of socializing happening in the first month or so. But since then, I've been out to dinner a few times, and I call ahead. I just call the restaurant ahead of time and let them know that I'm coming. And they've all except one place, they've all been happy to make me just plain boiled potatoes. And I went to one place and that was weird. They had potatoes on the menu, but they didn't want to do them without oil and butter and cheese and all that. So at that place, I just went and sat with my friends while they ate, and then I ate when I got home. Yeah, and everything was good. But the temptation, and it's a weird thing, because I think if that sort of thing had have happened in the first 2 weeks, I might not have made it through dinner, but because the first 2 weeks were a little bit of a challenge, but since then it's really been quite easy. I just haven't really been tempted by anything, and I can't really explain that. it's just the way it is.
Yeah, I can identify with that. I quit eating gluten several years ago, but I remember like the first 2 weeks were really a challenge for me because I had been used to eating pizza and sandwiches and all this other stuff that, cookies, but it was just really a big challenge for me. But after the 2 weeks, it was like everything was A-okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's pretty much my experience. And even the first 2 weeks weren't that hard, but there were moments when I felt like eating other things and where I thought, where I wished I could eat other things, but I don't know. It wasn't super challenging. I just got through that, and since then it's just been no trouble.
Yeah. Has it ever gotten boring to you just eating potatoes?
No, not really. That's a weird thing. Like before I started, I thought that this was going to be basically a year of extreme mental toughness to try to get through, but I just can't explain it. I'm not bored. I'm satisfied all the time, and I eat basically more or less the same thing every day and every meal. And yeah, I'm just satisfied. Everything's good. I don't really want anything else.
Yeah. Before we got on, you mentioned that you were married, and I know sometimes when you have a spouse that a lot of times what will happen is you clash. Like someone is on a diet, and usually it's the reverse. Like the woman is on a diet, but the man isn't.
Yeah,
and usually
yeah.
the man is the bad influence. I'm wondering, with your wife right now, is she supporting you? Do you clash because you're only eating potatoes? And obviously, I don't know if she's just eating potatoes. She might be eating other things. But is there any type of clash going on there?
No, there's really not. And it's not like she's eating more potatoes than she used to because they're always there. So it's an easy snack for her. If she's hungry, she can just grab a potato. But yeah, she's just doing what she wants to do. And I have really made a conscious effort not to, try to push anything on her or, hey, you should try this or why don't you join in or whatever. I've just left it totally up to her. And yeah, she's been really chilled about it. She's been really supportive, but at the same time, she's just been eating what she wants to eat. And it's really, like I said, I'm not tempted by anything. So, if she wants to sit down next to me and eat ice cream or whatever, that's totally fine with me because I'm just not interested in the ice cream. Maybe if I was still getting tempted by things, it would be a problem. But yeah, I'm just not tempted. So it's really not an issue.
Yeah, you're better than me, man. I can't really tolerate milk, but now they have these non-dairy ice creams that I've been really getting into.
Yeah, that's what my wife eats.
It's my weakness now. I try not to do it too often, but when I do, I tend to enjoy it. You mentioned that you were.
Just in the first few weeks, I found out later that she was going out to eat like bad food away from me, and which I didn't know at the time, but in hindsight that was probably a good idea just to help me get through the start of it. And but since then everything's good and she just eats whatever she wants.
Yeah. You mentioned that you were, by American standards, almost 335 pounds, which is, you're 6'5", but I imagine that's a lot of weight.
Yeah, it's a lot of weight. Yeah,
how much have you lost? Where are you right now?
As of today, I've lost 39 kilos. So that would be like 85 pounds or something around that, I'm guessing.
I think it's 2.2 pounds for every kilo. So that's probably 70 something. Yeah, maybe 80 something pounds. Yeah.
A lot.
And how long have you been doing the potato diet?
I started on January 1st, and so what is it now, 15th of June or 16th? Mm-hmm. I think it's like 168 days or something like that at the moment. So, yeah.
Wow.
It's like a quarter of a kilo a day on average. Half a pound a day on average.
Yeah. Did you test any of your markers as far as maybe your cholesterol, your heart capacity, things of that nature before you started? Or did you test them? Do you know where you are right now?
Yeah, I haven't got the results on me right now, but it's up on YouTube as of a few days ago. But yeah, all my blood markers are just getting better as the year goes on. So I had one test right at the beginning, and then one test a couple of months ago, and then another test last week. And yeah, cholesterol's very low. There's a doctor, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, who's a cardiologist, I think. Anyway, he wrote a book called Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, and in that book, he talks about how there's never been a recorded heart attack in a person with a cholesterol level below 150. And I think at the moment we have different values in Australia. Mine's 2.6 in the Australian value, which I think translates to about 110 in the US. So I'm well below that level where supposedly you're heart attack proof, and I was well above that level when I started. So yeah, that's pretty cool, I think. And yeah, my fasting blood sugar is way down. I can't remember the value off the top of my head, but it's really decreased a lot since the start of the year. And yeah, no deficiencies. I've actually been doing strength training, and yeah, despite the low, relatively anyway, low protein level in potatoes, I've been getting stronger, building muscle. And yeah, I've had a DEXA scan as well, which is like you lie on a table and a scanner thing just sort of goes over your whole body, and it detects what your muscle mass and your bone mass and everything else weighs. And I haven't had the second one of that yet, but I had one of them. I think it was after 3 months was when I first learned that those was something you could do. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to getting another one of those. What else? My iron level is really high. My doctor thought that if I was a Tour de France rider, for example, then I'd be my level of oxygen carrying capacity in my blood is almost on the borderline of where I'd be suspected of blood doping if I was a professional athlete. So, yeah, so everything's going really well. Yeah, I haven't got any complaints, and nothing in my biomarkers that I've tested anyway is showing anything wrong.
Yeah, sounds fantastic. I had Tim Steele on, and Tim Steele actually told me about you.
Good guy, Tim.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He came on, and we talked a lot about the potato diet. Yeah. But did you originally discover it from him, or how did you discover the diet?
No, I got in contact with him probably a month after I started. And I wish I had have contacted him earlier, because he is a wealth of knowledge of anything potato related.
Right.
But yeah, he's a cool guy. And but yeah, my original thing was, like I said earlier, how I was sitting on the couch and thinking about addictions, and then I had the idea to quit everything but one food. And I can't remember exactly what I searched, but I did some sort of search in Google, maybe like looking for the perfect food or the healthiest food or something like that. And the first thing that came up was a video on a YouTube channel called Veg Source, and the speaker was a guy called Dr. John McDougall, and the video was called "Potatoes, the Perfect Food," and it was maybe a 3-minute long video or something where Dr. John McDougall talked about the history of human beings as starch eaters, and specifically as potato eaters, and talking about different tribes around the world that live off mostly potatoes, and talking about the Irish diet. A few centuries ago, before the potato famine, they lived off mostly potatoes, and a whole heap of information. He managed to cram a lot of information into a 3-minute video, and that I watched that, and then there were some links in that, and he referenced some scientific studies and things like that. So then from there, I branched out and read lots of other things, a few studies and a couple of different books, and watched more lectures online from other nutrition experts. And yeah, just sort of, that's where it all began though. That very first search, the very first thing I looked at was that video called "Potatoes, the Perfect Food" by Dr. John McDougall. And yeah, it was, I guess I got lucky on my first search, and it really sparked things for me.
Yeah. We talked a little bit earlier in the interview about the alcoholic saying that they would have one beer and that'll be it. Is there ever any fear in the back of your mind as to what might happen if you suddenly start going off potatoes and want to integrate more or different foods into your diet? Or is there any fear with that?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, I think it's only natural that there would be, because like I've said, I've done lots of different diets over the years. Nothing that I've done for a whole year, but yeah, there is that fear, and I don't think that fear will ever go away. And I actually think it's a healthy fear too, because when I'm thinking about, I have no fear that I can make it through this year. That's to me, it feels like a foregone conclusion. But I don't want to stick with potatoes for my whole life. I want to go back to eating in a normal-ish sort of way, anyway, without the junk food. But yeah, I think it's important to keep that fear at the front of my mind, so that when those tempting times come up, that I'll have that there ready to say, no, this is a bad idea. Don't do it. Because I do think it's a very slippery slope for me, that if I do go and eat other things, then it worries me that I might not be able to stop. But having said that, as the year's gone on, that fear is diminishing. I do feel more and more like I'll be able to control it when I'm finished. But, I have heard alcoholics talk about, every day is a battle with alcoholism, and there's another great podcast that I listen to, the Rich Roll podcast, and he's an ex-alcoholic, and
Right.
And he talks a lot about how when he wakes up every day, and it's just about how to. It doesn't feel like he's got it conquered. It's just each day he just wakes up and says, right, I've just got to get through this day without drinking a beer, and that's like after 15 years of being sober. So. Yeah, I'm not really under any illusions that this year is going to cure me totally. It's just about learning how to deal with those emotions that come up, and the cues that come up that make me want to eat junk food, and just getting my mind around the whole situation.
Yeah, they say everybody has an addiction. Mine happens to be shoes. With women, it's shoes, but mine with tennis shoes. I have my own addiction. I have shoes sitting up in my closet now that I've never worn, and I'm like, okay, when am I going to wear these shoes, and why did I buy them? But it's just tennis shoes, Nikes, Pumas, all kinds of shoes that I have sitting in my closet I never really wear.
I'm sorry. I don't think potatoes are going to fix that problem for you.
Yeah, I don't think so either. White potatoes. Tim mentioned that you use white potatoes. Did you integrate? Are you just using white potatoes or sweet potatoes? Something that you use as well? Or?
Yeah, all kinds of potatoes. So sweet potatoes as well, and all kinds of sweet potatoes too. But it's probably, I'd say 3/4 of what I eat is white potatoes, and then maybe 2/3 to 3/4 of what I eat would be white potatoes, and then sweet potatoes as well. But I prefer the white potatoes, to be honest.
Yeah, when Tim and I talked, we talked a little bit about the what is it called, gut resistant starch, and I'm wondering, did you have any digestive problems before you actually started on the potato diet, and did they help any digestion problem if you had them?
Yeah, I had some problems with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, which that sort of runs in my family. That pretty much everyone who's in my family has it. Yeah. But sorry to my family if you're listening for outing you on that one. But yeah, so I have had that, and this year, probably the first 5 days, I think it was, I had some trouble digesting the potatoes, and I was really bloated. But by day 6, everything was good, and it's been really good since. And for that side of things, it's never been better for me. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, you mentioned that you were bloated. Was the bloating, you think, from the potatoes, or was your body adjusting to potatoes at the time?
Yeah, I think you can't really be sure, obviously, but I think it was just it was probably because of a sudden increase in my fiber intake.
Right.
So I didn't ease into it. I just went from my previous junk food eating ways, which is obviously not so high in fiber, to straight into only potatoes. So I think all it was my body adapting to extra fiber.
Yeah. Pooping. I won't say that's the other word, but I know for me, when I eat potatoes, for some odd reason, and this is personal, I know this might be TMI, too much information for people, but it tends to kind of stop my process. But I'm wondering for you, have you have any issues with actually maintaining a regular bowel movement?
Yeah, well, that's the same answer, really. It was just in the first 5 days that was a problem, and maybe from memory, I think it was maybe day 4 and day 5. I went for 2 days without going, and then from day 6 on, everything was good. And yeah, it's 2 to 3 times a day, every day now, and it's pretty good.
Yeah. Are you drinking like a lot of water along with the potatoes, making sure you get adequate hydration?
Yeah, I'm not tracking my water, but I feel like I'm probably drinking less than I was before, and I think that's probably because most of what I eat is either mashed or boiled potatoes, and when you cook them that way, they maintain their water content, which is a fairly high water content. So I think because of that, I'm getting a lot of water in what I eat, which means I don't have to drink as much. But I've never tracked my water intake, so I can't really be sure about that. I just drink when I'm thirsty, and then if I go to the toilet and my urine's yellow, then that's a sign of dehydration. So if that happens, then I quickly go and have a big drink of water straight away, and I try to make sure that it's always clear when I go to the toilet. But yes, we're talking a lot about toilets at the moment, aren't we? but
it's natural.
So that's all it is. I don't have an aim where I want to drink 6 glasses of water or 2 liters or whatever. I just drink when I'm thirsty, and like I said, if my urine's yellow, then I drink something extra straight away.
Right. With the potatoes, you mentioned earlier that you went to a restaurant, and I believe you said they would only prepare them with like butter or salt or something. Are you eating? Are you shying away from the butter and the salt? And when you eat your potatoes, is it skin on or skin off, or does it really matter?
Yeah, so I'm still eating a little bit of salt. I eat my potatoes with a little bit of salt, maybe a little bit of herbs and spices, just very minimal, and sometimes a bit of tomato sauce or ketchup, as you call it in the US. Maybe a little bit of barbecue sauce or chili sauce or something. I keep all that very minimal, though. It's just there for a bit of flavor. As far as what I don't eat, I think is more important. And I'm not having any oil or any butter or any cheese or cream or bacon bits or any other of that stuff that people normally put on potatoes. And I think that is the most important thing about it all, because people generally tend to think of potatoes as being unhealthy. And obviously I think that's not true. And the reason I think that potatoes have that bad rap is that as soon as you start cooking potatoes in oil and covering them in cheese and cream and bacon bits and whatever, that's when you turn the potato from a healthy meal into an unhealthy meal, and that's when it's going to make you fat. But if you get rid of all that stuff and just have the potato on its own with no oil and none of that other stuff that I mentioned, then it's really healthy. So yeah, so that's the main thing. I'm just having very, very minimal sauces and herbs and spices and salt and things like that, and definitely avoiding oil and cheese and cream and bacon bits and all those sorts of things that people normally have on potatoes.
Yeah, you mentioned butter. I don't know if you just said that off the top of your head, but I don't know. Here in America, we're starting to feel that butter wasn't the enemy. I don't know about where you are, but is there a specific reason why you're kind of staying away from butter? Yeah,
well, I disagree with that, actually. I think butter's no good, and from what I've read a couple of the studies about. I'm not a nutritional expert here, so
Right.
I don't know. You've probably got some listeners that are going to think I'm an idiot for saying this or whatever. But yeah, to me, I don't think that, I read there was an article on the front cover of the Time magazine where it was all about how butter, we've got it wrong, butter's great and all that. But I read one of the studies it was based on, and it just didn't seem that conclusive to me. It seemed, and in the conclusion of the study that I read, they said that basically the conclusion was maybe butter's not as bad as we thought it was, but they never mentioned anything saying butter was healthy. But then, the journalists that wrote the article in that Time magazine were all about how healthy butter is. But I didn't read any, the studies they referenced said nothing about butter being healthy. It just said maybe it's not as bad as we thought it was. And that was a maybe. They weren't even sure about it in the study I read. So, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, it's not for me to talk about that because I'm not a qualified nutrition scientist or anything, but all I am saying is that I'm skeptical about all that media about butter being healthy all of a sudden. I just don't think it's healthy, and I've excluded it for this year, and I've never been healthier, and that goes with all other high fat things that I had in my diet last year, and I really feel like that. I feel like more than the potatoes being healthy, it's that I've got rid of the stuff that's unhealthy, which is the oils and butter and cheese and all of that. And I really feel like that is a bigger difference than just how healthy the potatoes are.
Yeah. Getting back to white potatoes and sweet potatoes, I know in the previous interview that I did, Tim specifically said something about, he didn't say the sweet potatoes were bad, but he said for whatever reason you wanted to stick with the white potatoes. What's been your experience with that? Are they equally as well, or do you do the sweet potatoes just to add a little bit more variety? Or because the white potato and the sweet potato, even though they are similar, my understanding is that they are very different.
Yeah, they're similar in some ways and very different in other ways as well. They've got different nutrient profiles. As far as the macronutrients go, they're fairly similar. They've got fairly similar levels of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. But the micronutrients, so the vitamins and minerals, are a bit different. And yeah, so partly the reason why I added sweet potatoes in was because of the different micronutrient profiles. I felt like they complemented each other pretty well. And so where the white potatoes might be slightly low. So remember what Tim's talking about in the potato hack is he's talking about, 3 to 5 days worth of eating only potatoes. And really you could go for 5 days without eating anything and you're not going to get any deficiencies in any sort of nutrients just in 5 days. So just eating potatoes for 5 days is not going to give you a deficiency either. But I was looking at going for a whole year. So because of that, I thought I would be better off including some sweet potatoes as well, just so that I'd have that complementary nutrient profile. And things like in white potatoes, vitamin A is a little bit low. I don't think it's low enough to really cause problems, but at the same time, vitamin A in sweet potatoes is quite high, like very high. So I just thought it couldn't hurt to just cover a couple of bases that way, and as well as just giving me a little bit of variety to help me get through the year.
Yeah, there was something that I forgot to ask, and I've been doing a lot of research on blood pressure, and one of the things that almost always accompanies people who might have issues with their weight is higher blood pressure. And reading the book that I read to research the show with Tim, he mentioned that, or him and I talked on the show about blood pressure, and he said that the blood pressure was lowered when they did the potatoes after a while. Yeah. Were you aware where your blood pressure was when you started, and has it lowered?
At the start I got my blood pressure tested, and I can't remember what the value was at the moment. Sorry, but
That's okay.
I think it was something like 140 over 90 or something like that. And last week I got it done again, and it was 120 over 70. So
Wow.
yeah, it's improved. It wasn't like, it was high in the beginning, but not like super high to the point where we'd be looking at taking drugs to try to lower it and things like that. But like I said, like I didn't have any major health issues, but I was heading down that road where health issues were on the horizon, and yeah, right now my blood pressure's perfect. 120 over 70 is pretty good. So yeah, the potatoes have definitely helped my blood pressure.
Yeah. Give me a typical day, Andrew. You wake up, are you eating like a breakfast, lunch, dinner type of scenario, or how do you integrate your potatoes in throughout the day?
Yeah, well, it does vary a bit. It's some days, actually, I was going to say some days I have one meal, but that's pretty rare to only have one meal. But basically, I just eat whenever I feel like it. Whenever I feel hungry, I eat, and I just eat as much as I feel like at the time. So there's no restriction at all. It's just eat as much as I want whenever I want, and that most days it's probably 4 to 5 meals a day. And so I'll wake up. These days I'm getting up pretty early and doing some exercise in the morning, and then when I get home I have breakfast. And I'm a school teacher, so I have my breakfast in the morning, and then at recess time at school I'll have something to eat then, and then at lunchtime at school today I didn't have anything. I didn't feel hungry at lunchtime, so I skipped lunch. And then after school, when I got home, I had a meal when I got home. And then just before we started the podcast, I ate something else. So today it was 4 meals. Right. And yeah, it just varies day to day. I don't like have set times or set amounts to eat. I just, like I said, eat as much as I want whenever I want. And it probably varies between 3 and 6 meals a day.
Yeah, you're a bigger guy like myself. How many potatoes are you actually eating at one sitting?
Yeah, I've been asked that a lot, and I've never counted. And I think it's sort of with potatoes, because I'm eating a variety of potatoes that are all different shapes and sizes, it sort of makes numbers irrelevant anyway. But in the beginning, I was buying them in 2 kilo bags. So what's that? Probably 4.5 pound bags of potatoes. And so that's how I was able to keep track of how many I was eating, and it worked out to be about 3.5 kilos a day. So that's probably close to 8 pounds a day. And so I'm assuming I'm still eating the same, but I've not been keeping count for the last couple of months. But I assume it's still around the same of about 3.5 kilos, 8 pounds a day. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that a lot of people encounter when they're on diets is they feel deprived. And I'm wondering if you ever get that feeling of deprivation by just eating potatoes all the time. Or are you satiated when you eat them?
No, because I eat until I'm full, and I eat until I don't want anything else, then no, I don't really get that. In the beginning, it was like... I had some little techniques I used in the beginning when I was feeling deprived and when I felt like I wanted something else. And one of them was this was the most effective thing for me anyway. It was I would be wishing I could eat something else, and rather than telling myself, it's sort of a mind trick, rather than telling myself that no, you can't eat that bit of chocolate cake and you're never going to eat chocolate cake ever again, instead of that, I would say, sure, you can eat the chocolate cake, no problem. But first, let's eat a big plate of potatoes. And then once the potatoes are gone, if you still want the chocolate cake, then go for it. So then I would organise some potatoes and sit down and eat a really big plate of potatoes. And of course, by the time I finished the plate, I was full. And then I would look at the chocolate cake and it wasn't so appealing anymore because I was full. And that was the way I got through that earlier time. And since then, I feel like I've mastered the potato eating challenge, and I really don't feel deprived anymore.
Yeah. I guess for the audience, what I want to ask is, do you recommend going cold turkey? Like sometimes most of the time when people start a diet, because I remember I used to do this, it's like when the weekend came, I was like, okay, it's a weekend, I'll start my diet Monday.
That's familiar.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if you recommend for, let's say, someone who's a little bit more on the heavier side, is it more of an advantage to go cold turkey and just start doing the potatoes, or say do the potatoes, like let's say for breakfast, and then maybe eat a normal regular meal, and then at some point start weaning out the normal regular meals and just go straight potatoes? Or again, is it better to do cold turkey and just start potatoes and nothing else?
That's a really good question. But before I answer, I just want to be, all this year I've been really careful to point out that this is what I'm doing is just an experiment that I'm doing just for me to try to try to fix my own problems. And I just felt like it would be interesting to share it with the world. And it's not about me sitting here and saying, hey, everyone should be eating potatoes. Hey, everybody follow me. It's just, I'm doing this for myself. And if anyone wants to find out about it or follow me, then that's cool. But I'm not here to try to spread the gospel of the potato. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But having said that, if I was in a position that I could give advice to people, which I don't feel like I am, I don't feel like I'm an expert that's worthy of being able to tell people what to do. But if I was, I would say, go cold turkey and just, if you're going to do something, I sort of feel like either do it or don't do it. Just let's not be halfway about things. Let's just like in poker, just go all in and get straight in there. And the reason I say that is because I think if you go cold turkey and just do it, then the changes happen more quickly, and you'll notice changes in the way you feel and changes in your weight, and all these sorts of changes will happen very quickly if you go cold turkey. Mm-hmm. And when you notice those changes happening, it encourages you to push on and keep going. Whereas if you ease into it and just maybe start with only having potatoes for breakfast, and then build up to potatoes for lunch, and gradually build up to potatoes for dinner as well, then that means the positive changes happen incrementally as well, and you might not notice them so much. So that's the thing for me, that if you do it cold turkey, then the changes happen quick and you notice them, and it excites you and it motivates you to keep going. So that's how I feel about that.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I can't do anything by just weaning myself off. I had to just do cold turkey. So I know exactly what you're saying. If I make up my mind and commit to do something, it's like, okay, I'm going to do it. Nothing else is going to stray me from doing it.
Man, do it or don't do it. Just make a decision and go with it.
Yeah. Last question. Do you think this is helping you reestablish your relationship with food?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. So far, so good. Like I said earlier, or we said earlier, the real test will be at the end of the year when I stop eating only potatoes and go back to including other foods in my diet. But all I can comment on is what's happened so far. And I really, really do feel like it's had a huge impact on my feelings about food. And one of the things I wanted out of it was that I've always envied people that could see food as fuel, and just sitting down to a meal wasn't about trying to get emotional comfort and support and enjoyment out of the food. It was just, you obviously that's not a problem if you enjoy your food, but number one, it's about fueling your body properly and just putting good quality petrol in the tank. And I always envied that about a lot of people that, really fit, healthy people. It just seems to be about, let's just put some good quality fuel in the tank and then move on and do something else. And at the moment, that's the way I'm eating with potatoes. It's not, I like the fact that I'm not excited about the meal that's coming up, and I'm not like, when I'm eating a meal, it's not setting off fireworks in my brain. And it's just, I'm just putting some fuel in the tank, and it's sort of an indifferent kind of process. And it's not like I'm not bored by potatoes and I don't hate them, but I don't love them either. It's just something I've got to do to continue on.
Right.
So far so good. But like I said, the real test is next year.
Yeah. The real test is once you stop eating just potatoes. I would
say. I do feel confident that it's going to go well. I feel really good about it, but there's no way to know for sure until it happens.
Yeah. Andrew, it's been real, man. Loved having you on. I know you have a website. Give us your website if people want to go and check it out to learn more about, what you're doing and how to maybe conquer their weight issues with potatoes.
Yeah, no worries. It's spudfit.com, so spudfit.com. And you can contact me there for email if you want. And I've got a newsletter there as well. And I've only sent one out so far. I'm pretty slack at making newsletters. But yeah, I answer all my emails. Sometimes it takes a while because I get quite a bit. But if you've got any questions, then feel free to write to me and I'll get back to you one way or another, either by making a video on my YouTube channel or by just writing back to you. But yeah, so I've got spudfit.com and I'm Spudfit on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram too. I'm pretty slack with Instagram too though.
Yeah, I think we're all slack, man. There's so much out there now. I can't keep. I used to be on Periscope and then now I'm on Facebook. The Facebook now since Facebook has a live video, I'm doing that. And then
cool.
Yeah, you forget about the Periscope. It's just so much out there. And then you have Snapchat.
Yeah.
It's just
and I'm all new to this, I'm just learning as I go. I've never really been big on all this. I still don't know how to use Twitter. I've got an account, but I don't really understand Twitter,
Yeah,
I'm just learning as I go, and I'm working full time and trying to be a good husband and a good dad, and I just don't have time to keep up with everything. But I do answer emails. It just sometimes takes a while, but if you're interested, then write to me, and I'll do my best to get back to you.
Yeah. So, Andrew, man, like I said, it's been real, man. I really enjoyed the interview. If I can help you at any point in time, man, just reach out to me. It sounds to me like you have a book in you, man. So if you write a book, I'd love to have you back on.
Yeah, but, it's funny, at the start of the year or maybe a month in, people were saying, "Hey, you should write a book," and I was like, I don't know what I'd put in a book. It'd have one line. It would be eat potatoes.
Yeah.
But as the months go on, I'm starting to get ideas about a book, and I'm starting to think maybe I will write a book. So if I do get around to that, then I'd love to come back on and talk about it. And thanks for having me on. It's really cool. Like I said, I've listened to lots of podcasts, and I've listened to your podcast too. And especially while I'm out training, I love having their headphones in, but to actually be a guest on a podcast is an honor, and I've had a good time with you as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming on, man. So have a good evening. It's evening where you are. I'm actually just beginning to start my morning, so I'm going to stay up now, and I normally go to the park and do some walking in the morning, so I'm going to stay up and do something here in the office and then get out to the park and do some walking. So thanks for coming on, and have a good Friday evening.
No worries, and maybe make yourself a hash brown for breakfast, huh?
I usually wait till about 12 o'clock to eat, so.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that for me, I don't do breakfast. I call it brunch, is what you call it. So
okay.
Yeah. But thanks, Andrew, for being on, man.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. It's been great. I've loved it.
All right.